Ahoy there, folks. For any of you following along, you'll know that I recently put up a video making this fine beastie. It's a shave horse. And then it hit me. Well, I figured, 100% on my own accord, that now would be a good time to show you lot why this is one of my favorite pieces of shop kit and a few tips and tricks on how I use it. I figure we ought to make something, seeing as we're having a chat, so I got a bit of this old walnut. Now typically you'd use green wood, or stuff that's got a bit more moisture in it. All that means is the material's a bit drier and a bit more difficult to work with. But we've got strong hands, and that's never stopped us before. You can see that the jaws are holding really well, and I know I can draw a knife off of this, but there's a bit more play in the material than I'd like. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a piece of softer material to the jaws. In my case, I'm going to use leather because that's what I've got. It'll give us a bit more grip as the jaws close on the material, and it'll be a hell of a lot easier to work. So, step 2. Now that that's sorted, let's get started. First thing I do is plan out a rough shape. I figure we'll go with the spatula for 2 reasons. 1, it's a great tool for cooking up food in your kitchen. And 2, it may just help you paddle your ship if the wind stops blowing. That'll do for now. If I had one of those big boy bandsaws, I'd probably trim out the rough shape right now. Seeing as we don't, I turn to the shave horse. Bandsaw is a fantastic piece of kit, but with hand tools and a little bit of elbow grease, I can get the job done just fine. I'm going to start with Old Faithful draw knife. This is my draw knife. Well, a favorite of mine. I got a few. They come in different flavors, shapes, and sizes. This just so happens to be my favorite. For any of you that have never used a draw knife before, it's typically a piece of steel with a flat back and a beveled cutting edge on the front. A couple of nice handles for pulling, and they shape wood like a beast. All we need to do is take our material, throw it in the jaws, a little bit of pressure with the feet, and get after it. If any of you watched the build video, you may have noted that this foot pedal rotates and pivots. I did that so that when you place your foot here to put pressure on it, no matter what position the top jaw is in, that will pivot to what's most comfortable on your toes. Now, if you've never used a draw knife before, let alone a draw knife and a shave horse, most people want to attack it with the bevel side facing up. What that's going to do is take that knife edge and dig it into the wood, which is great for removing a lot of material and roughing things out. But if you turn the draw knife over with the bevel side down, you can actually get a more controlled pull and take off less material for finer detail work. I always think of it this way. This is for big bites because I can see the teeth. This is for small bites because I can't see the teeth. Savvy? I'm just keeping even pressure on my feet. Nice light pulls, no reason to dig in. Take your time. We'll get to where we're going. Now you may have already noticed one of my favorite things about the shave horse, and that is the speed with which I'm able to engage and disengage the jaws while I turn my material. Now I've seen plenty of people use a draw knife on a benchtop vise. That's all well and good. But imagine the amount of time you're standing there, cranking and uncranking the vise every time you want to turn your material. With the shave horse, I don't have to lean over a bench vise just so I can see the planes of the material that I'm working on. I can sit very comfortably, turn my material just with lifting my foot, continue working. As far as I'm concerned, this is a hell of a lot faster. Alright, I've been at this for about 10 minutes, and while I've got a rough shape, I'm starting to run into some issues draw knifing over this knot. So I'm going to switch to my second favorite tool, almost my first favorite tool. This is a Shinto wood rasp. It's pretty much just a bunch of bandsaw blades strewn together. There's a rough side and a fine side. Makes light work of things like these knots and general rough carving. It works in a single direction, so you can either push, or I tend to pull a lot when I work. And I'm just drawing down, and it's trimming off a lot of those harsh edges and biting through some of the harder wood that my draw knife is pulling. After I do a rough shave, I always switch it over to the fine side and then go back and knock down a lot of that fur. Now, before I get too far along, I need to sort out this crack situation. I think what I'm gonna do is actually call an audible and dish it out, make it a little bit more like a spoon. It'll still work like an orc, but I think it might be a little bit more of a utility tool for the kitchen. So I'm gonna start scooping this out, get rid of that crack, leave some of the meat on the bottom, and really start refining the shape of this with the rasp. You know, one thing I noticed with these rasps is they get clogged up every now and then, so I keep a steel brush near me. That way, it'll perform a lot better if I keep it clean. So I'm gonna switch away from the rasp so I can start working on this bowl. I'm gonna use a couple different tools for making the dish. They come in a spoon making kit. As far as I know, this is called a hook knife. I'm not sure what this is called, but they're extremely sharp. I've cut myself tons of times on these two tools specifically. So be careful, don't get your hands anywhere close. You can use the dull edge here at the bottom to push away from yourself or pull in. And you can also use them as scrapers as well as actual carving tools. So they're a really utility tool for actually creating concaves in wood. Well, I ran into a bit of a problem as I was filing down. I realized that that crack from earlier actually goes all the way through. While that's a bit inconvenient, it's not necessarily going to stop me from finishing this piece. It just means that I have to make it smaller. I've got a few blacksmithing friends that run into the same issue. You don't really ruin a knife, you just make a smaller one. Now I'm going to have to see what I end up with after I take this section out. It might just mean making everything a bit smaller, changing the shape a little bit, but you know, it's a learning experience and I'm having a good time. I'm actually going to go at this with another favorite tool of mine. This is a spoke shave. It's effectively just a plane, except for that the handles are on the side rather than on the top like a block plane. But I love this for all kinds of woodworking projects. I'm kind of happy with the shape. It's weird and I like it. Now I'm just going to move on to sanding. I like to spray glue a little bit of sandpaper to a mixing stick. That way I can keep really nice flat edges on all of my facets. Well, that's the sanding done. Now for a bit of oil just to finish it up. Oh my. I'd say that turned out pretty well considering what we started with. Not sure what I made. It's a spoon spatula combo. It's a spootula. Yeah, that's it. Hopefully that answered a few questions about why I think a shave horse is such an important piece of kit for me. I've made everything from axe and hammer handles all the way up to treasure chests and bows. If you're anything like me and sometimes you like doing things the old-fashioned way, a shave horse is a great piece of utility kit. For any of you that may want to try and knock together your own shave horse, I'm putting a link to my website in the description with plans on how I made this specific shave horse. I will make this suggestion though. If you're going to make your own, try and make it for what you're going to use it for. This is specifically made to suit me and my needs, and it's made for my size, so if you want to build your own, keep that in mind. I'm also going to include links to all the tools I use because that Shinto rasp is worth having in your shop. And lastly, I'm going to put a couple of links to some more traditional shave horses if you feel like going more of the woodworking route and less of the welding route. Not everybody's got a welder, I completely understand. I think it's time for me and my horse to ride off into the sunset. Giddy up and all that.